Thank you, Lynn. Um, I just wanted to begin with a short word about Veronica's meditations. Um, what I found, what is really powerful and helpful listening to her meditations, is allowing Holy Spirit to listen to those meditations for me and as me. I stay away from analyzing, from judging, or thinking about anything that is being said in those meditations. I just surrender it to Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, listen to this for me. Take me to where this is leading for me, and the meditations are so powerful and beautiful for me when I listen to them that way, just surrendering my ego. Don't bring my ego into the meditation with me. And for the length of that meditation, um, when I surrender it to Holy Spirit, then I can go the whole way and take that divine trip. Um, so, anyways, I just thought that might be something helpful. So, I'm going to continue with my readings from the Cosmic History Chronicles, Volume 1, which is the book of the throne. And I am going to pick up where I last left off, which was the chapter on deconstruct, purify, and reformulate on part 1. Okay, so I'm going to start off here with this paragraph, which is cosmic history is the interpenetration of the absolute into the relative. At the end of the cycle on planet Earth, which is where we are now, the absolute is eliminated altogether from the equation of consciousness, and there is only the relative mind speaking to the relative mind, ultimately making no sense. The relative can only make sense within the context of the absolute. If the absolute is missing, then the relative means nothing. In this regard, we say in cosmic history, cosmos is the absolute and history is the relative. Together, cosmos and history create a description of a process of consciousness. Okay, so the beginning of the paragraph is what I understand it's saying is truth. God, spirit, source, whatever we want to call it, is interpenetrating into the relative. The relative is our individual ego consciousness, our separate consciousness from the whole into the absolute. So he indicates that this is where we are now in our process of evolution, that the absolute is eliminated altogether from the equation of consciousness. So this is where we are at right now, where there is only the relative mind speaking to the relative mind. So it's the ego mind with my interests in mind, my survival interests in mind, speaking to the relative mind, which is everyone else's relative interests, plans, survival strategy, so on and so forth. So in the realm of the absolute, of truth, of the unconditioned love, we are making no sense at all. And I see this in my life so many times, and I walk the same path as special relationships where one ego has its own interests, where the other one is going to fulfill its good, its happiness, and the other one thinking the same way. And there really isn't any love there. There is that excitement that the ego has now found its source of happiness outside of itself, but ultimately you just have two egos that will find out that outside of themselves, there is no answer. I'm not saying that relationships don't work, um, but what I find in the long run, especially today, it's not like the old day where you don't see so many divorces. It's like the norm nowadays, right now. So, um, let's see. Okay. So that's pretty much what it says in this paragraph. The relative can only make sense within the contents of the absolute. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's the only way, which is a non-dual construct, can only make sense. And in the relative, 1 plus 1 can equal 2. That could be good or bad, more or less in the dual ego mind. Okay, next paragraph. In studying cosmic history, we are learning knowledge and techniques for elevating the dull, normal state of consciousness towards the absolute. What we refer to as galactic meditation is one of the principal techniques and processes that help elevate us to a cosmic condition of mind called cosmic history. The state of mind involves the ongoing experience of what simultaneity of the relative and the absolute. This is what heightens your awareness, making reality appear hallucinatory or dreamlike, which it is. And this concept of simultaneity, which I can hardly pronounce, is what Einstein used to prove his theory of relativity, where two people see the same thing and supposedly see the same thing, but their perceptions are different. And so what he's saying here in the galactic meditation is that we rise above that that relative perception and move it into the absolute. Okay, next paragraph. To practice this state of mind, which would be the observer state of mind, observe closely when you are in a crowd or in a store or on the street. Pay attention to what people are doing and what they are talking about. You will see that the majority of the people are in a particular, typical, late historical, materialistic 1260, which means a 12-month calendar, 60-minute clock, collective mental field. This is like being in a field of insects that are chirping. They don't know that they are in this field, and they don't know what their chirping is about, or even what it sounds like to someone who is not an insect. It is questionable whether crickets know that they make a blanket of sound at night or in the summertime, but they do. So you see, there is a certain type of automatic, unconscious, almost insect-like quality to the lives of people who are not conscious of the fact that they are operating in a collective unconscious program. Okay, now the way that I can explain this, what he's calling the 12-month calendar 60-minute clock. Okay, I had an experience about this, let's say at the beginning of the week. So I was late for an appointment, and so I was getting stressed out about being late. And so there's the saying here is that time is money. So I realized that the reason why I was stressed out, because if I was late, then there's going to be a perception, a negative perception, which meant like my job, and my job means money. So I started thinking about how many things do I do that are based on not just the safety or whatever of money for my survival, but everything else that I do to ensure my survival. And when I look at those things, everything is based on this calendar, this 12-month calendar, 60-minute clock. And everything that I'm doing, or not everything, but most everything that I'm doing in a routine, being, holding a job, is based around this getting up in the morning, going on time, and going to work and performing a function, getting off work, and then having free time to enjoy the home or whatever that this money is providing. So with this 1260 mentality, we're turning the society into thinking that we go to work, get a job, get money, live to have things, and survive. Survive is the driving force of the society, and it also is the driving force of the ego. The ego is concerned with survival. So this whole society is based on survival, and the whole structure of the 1260 is based on how best to regulate this survival mechanism, this technosphere that is being talked about. So basically, that is a simple explanation of this, but it really goes into further and further into the book, where you can see there's more and more dramatic examples of how this particular calendar affects our lives. And when I first started reading and studying this, I would think, okay, well, what difference does it make if we got a 12-month calendar or a 13-month calendar? I don't see what the difference is. I still got to get up, go to work, and all of that. But as I studied more and more deeply, I realized that there is a fundamental difference, and the difference is in cycles. in natural cycles that we will explore as we go on into this book. Okay, so, and also like at the final sentences here is that so you see there is a certain type of automatic, unconscious, almost instant-like quality to the lives of people who are not conscious of the fact that they are operating in a collective unconscious program. I didn't know. I certainly did not know that that this whole structure was all based around the eagle survival thought system. So, anyways, next paragraph. This is a phenomenological description or observation of the present consensual realities. So we don't know any better, so we're just going along with it. Or let me say that I don't know any better, and I'm just going along with it. Let me clarify that. As you go more deeply into the state of mind known as cosmic history, your perceptions will sharpen, and you'll become increasingly aware of this. Just because someone is operating in the mind frame of consensual reality does not mean that when that person is encountered one-on-one, that they cannot be engaged and some quality of themselves cannot be drawn out and then flipped back on themselves so that they are returned to themselves. But how long is this consciousness maintained? More and more we come to see greater contrast between the current contemporary collective state of mind and the cosmic state of mind known as cosmic history. Okay, so I like this part of the sentence where it does say that just because someone is operating in this frame of mind does not mean that when a person is encountered one-on-one that they cannot be engaged and some quality of themselves cannot be drawn out and then flipped back on themselves so that they can be returned to themselves. To me, when I think about this in a Course in Miracles point of view, that is the importance of extending love, not necessarily talking about it in words and convincing someone. It's about being that presence in love. And so when he's saying that they will see some quality of themselves, that quality they have got to be talking about has to be love, the essence of the Christhood in them. So I like that sentence, which is the importance that we're playing as communication devices and participating. We have to participate in this required course in order to make this happen. And then the last sentence, more and more, we come to see a greater contrast between the current contemporary collective state of mind and that cosmic state of mind known as cosmic history. So even in this election cycle that we see some very contrasting characters here. We see a very egocentric characters in the Democratic and Republican, and then we see someone who is a little bit more towards an evolutionary process, like a Bernie Sanders, who is no longer in the race. But even if I'm looking at like a Donald Trump, he is more like someone that is not um, so establishment. And I'm not even sure if he gets in office. Sometimes, and I said this before in my life, is I have to go through what that extreme contrast of not being in a spiritual practice is. That's that extreme contrast of egocentricism, and suffer there for a while in order to move back into a spiritual discipline, into love and compassion. And I believe if a Donald Trump gets in there, we're going to be seeing this contrast, and I'm not even sure that seeing this contrast is going to be more beneficial than having a Bernie Sanders in there. So I mean, I'm just thinking this is a required course, and it's going to happen. Like in cosmic history, they're talking about it's an evolution. The spiritual evolution is going to happen no matter what. So if a Donald Trump goes in there, a Bernie Sanders comes in, it's all going to serve that purpose. But what he's just saying in that paragraph, that right now the state of the contrasts is very present, and it is going to serve that purpose in one way or the other. Okay, next section is called 13 Moons, First Step to a New Reality. The first step in shifting to a cosmic state of mind is through daily use of the 13 moon 28-day calendar. This is the basis and foundation of a new world structure. Cosmic history and the 13 moon calendar create a description of a process of consciousness. The purpose of cosmic history is as a construct of consciousness is to transform the human species altogether by transforming the mind and the very nature of consciousness itself. The 13 moon 28-day calendar is an instrument that creates a fundamental correction in consciousness by placing a radical harmonic matrix at the foundation of the mind. This ultimately makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so back to what I was talking about, like how can going into a different calendar make any kind of difference in the world. Okay, so I had to take a little drink there. So basically, for the brief description, because it's going to go into a lot of this more in the book, is that everything is based on cycles, and that is what this calendar is based on: cycles. Like a tree has its cycles, a woman has a cycle, seasons are cycles, everything has a cycle. And the natural cycle is a 13 moon 28-day calendar, which is a cycle of the moon and the sun and the rotation. So what this does, it brings everything back into a natural cycle. And if I can add something personal into this, is what it's talking about is that it is something that's an instrument that creates a fundamental correction in consciousness. So when we look at the Mayan calendar, everyone thinks that it's a calendar of time, but basically it's a calendar of consciousness. And each day they have a glyph that represents different, to me, intelligence, different consciousnesses that are present to work on at that particular day. Now, that could sound really far out for actually even for me until I started following it and doing it. I mean, we are in a process of evolution, and we are in a process of evolution by building intelligence on top of intelligence upon top of intelligence, but it only goes in a certain way, in a certain rate. So this calendar guides as far as what part of consciousness to work on at that particular day. Now, how that all is determined, I still don't know, and it is a mystery to me. And as hopefully when we get back more and more into the book, that will be revealed. But that is what the calendar's function is from way back in the day. Is when someone's born, they know why that person's born, what function that person serves. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that, okay, this person is going to be a barber or this person is going to have this function. Those functions that are talking about are the functions that we typically think about right now, because we're in this society, this industrial society, where somebody's got to do something and make a living and whatever they do. So we are in a consciousness of doing. We're doing a certain function to fit in society, a trash man, a postman, and this and that. So this necessarily does not mean that this person is going to be doing a certain thing. It is more sense that this person is going to hold a certain consciousness in functioning in the whole. And I guess that's the best way that I can describe it right now. And a personal example that I can bring up is that I believe it was Monday that the glyph was a seed, okay? And so the message behind the seed is that it has to break through that shell in order to grow and flourish. Okay, so the message that I got from that is that in order for me personally to grow, that I have got to be aware of my routine, habitual thinking and thoughts. By keeping that ego consciousness of judgment and defense and all that, I'm not going to get anywhere. So this is what my thinking is as I'm going out and starting my day. So starting my day in my car, the electronics aren't working good. I'm pulling out of my driveway. A car almost hits me. Okay, so I'm going, okay, well, I guess You know, I go to the store to get something to drink. They run out of what I'm going to have. I'm driving to work, and then there's a car that has a hood opening, and so all of these things are going. I'm judging and saying, well, this is wrong. You know, this isn't what I'm expecting. This is why is this happening? So I'm going through all of this kind of thinking, and then I say, well, hold on here. There is a message here, is that I'm moving into this world with expectations that my electronics is supposed to work all the time, that somebody's got to watch where they're going, that how come these people can't keep their soda thing filled up? How come this guy can't think of closing his trunk? So I have this whole bag of expectations of how the world should be. So what I'm learning from that is I need to pay attention to what these expectations are in order for me to have a a meaningful, peaceful, loving day. So instead of having these stressful expectation thoughts, that I can have a consciousness that is free and open to what this world is, to the world of the beauty, to see the birds, to see a greater purpose of what I can do with this day, instead of looking at all these obstacles that are in my way. So this is just a personal example. I guess you can make of it what you want, but I really enjoy working with this calendar every morning because there's always um, different aspects for me to work on, and to me, it's not really that different from A Course in Miracles, because all of the aspects that I see that I need to work on, or what this establishes, are definitely blockages that are pointed out in the Course in Miracles. And so it's very, very much in alignment to what I've the groundwork that the Course has laid into my life. And so to me, that's why I think it's worthwhile sharing. Okay, so the next paragraph. The 13 moon 28-day calendar is the harmonic software that shifts your mind into the 1320 frequency of synchronization. This will be expounded upon in the next chapter. On this basis, it is possible for the reformulation of the mind to occur at a mass level. Artificial time, 1260, is just a state of mind that keeps you from experiencing reality. The Gregorian calendar represents the artificial technospheric information knowledge base that is being dissolved. The 13 moon calendar represents the opening of a new reality which enables the establishment of cosmic history as a radically new knowledge base for humanity. Now, I do recognize that this 1320 frequency calendar is not just a Mayan thing. There are different indigenous groups that also use this calendar, and there are some indigenous groups that still use this calendar. So what is being said here, once we get out of the artificial 1260 state of mind, which is time is money, and evolve into the belief, which they call time is art, that our time is being used for the creative purpose that is um, that is shared with God, with Source, with whatever you want to call it. Um, as as this really looks as the whole world as the imagination of God, and God didn't create the for us to live in this society where all we are just a function of putting in time to make money. But time is established to and for um, the image and likeness of imagination, that God created us in his image and likeness. His image and likeness is imagination, creativity, and so on and so forth. So once we evolve out of the 1260 purpose, then we go into time is art. So having said that, I'm not saying that having a job, and I have a job, that I go in at a certain time and leave a certain time, does not mean that I don't have a creative function in what I'm doing. But what I'm evolving into is not a to do what I love. The whole process is in this society is find something you love to do and do it. Find your passion and do it. And it is, if you had all of this money and you could do anything, what would it be? And do it. And that still is within the 1260 matrix. What it is in the 1320 is to, whatever you're doing, love what you're doing. When time is art, then you are in that space where the purpose is to be that creative and that purposeful life that you're living. And so automatically it is going to be an unconditional love the way that you're living in the first place. So you're going to love what you're doing if you're sweeping the streets, if you're an electrician, or if you are a gardener, or whatever you choose to be. The whole purpose of what you're doing, the job and the function is not what you're going to be loving. It's not going to be the driving force of your ambition and what you're going to be and what your dreams are to be, to have, to do. The doing isn't the goal in cosmic history. It's to love what you're doing, to be in that space that of the unconditioned where you're not judging it in terms of what you're doing in society's terms or any kind of frame of reference in any kind of status of this job is more valuable than that job, and because we want to do, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, not necessarily for because I love doing it, because it pays more, or I want to go to Wall Street because I have all this money, you know, and that's the whole logic of the 1260 is time is money. Your time is only worth money. So we're evolving into the the consciousness that time is art. Time is art, where we love what we do. We love who we are. We love being, and I mean, if we love ourselves, not as an ego self, but love what we are as the image and likeness, then all we do is extend. All we do is extend that to everything we do. So we do everything with love because we are love, and we extend as love in everything that we do. So this is what we're talking about here when we're talking about the 13 moon calendar. Okay, so next paragraph. In reality, there is only one cosmic history. In reality, there is only cosmic history. As we mentioned earlier, what we call human history is actually the history of the development of materialism that creates the technosphere and the entire artificial apparatus that culminates at the climax of history. In the Mayan measure of history, this point is known as the climax of matter in the 13 Bactum of the wave harmonic of history. Then he says, for more information, see the Mayan factor and time and the technosphere, which these two books really break it all down. And the thing about studying this, they use a lot of terms, a lot of concepts, and to go over each concept, explain it in full, in understanding, we wouldn't get very far in this. So basically, what we're doing here is we're getting a general idea of what cosmic history is. Okay, so human history actually is a history of the development of materialism. So what we're talking about is what the form of the evolving consciousness produces. Airplanes, the wheel, all of these things is basically what the human history is. Who wins what war? Who has the power for this and that? So it is basically what the form is of the consciousness that is evolving, is what he is trying to say. And once again, he says it's culminating in the climax of history. So right now we're at that point in that December 2012 where we hit that point where now the evolution, where we start another cycle, and that cycle takes us back to our spiritual origin, our spiritual truth, which is the whole purpose of the Course in Miracles also. Okay, next paragraph. Cosmic history encompasses absolutely everything that can be known, everything that will be known, and everything that has been forgotten. The whole of reality is encompassed by cosmic history. Even the little histories that men write in their books that fill the bookstores and libraries. These are all distorted splinters of the actual cosmic history. This includes all science and philosophy and every other form of knowledge that exists. Everything that exists is some aspect of cosmic history. So when we talk about introducing cosmic history to humanity, we are talking about opening a vent in the dense technospheric cloud. And through this vent, the reality of cosmic history comes through and begins to permeate the otherwise polluted atmosphere. Okay, so what he is saying about opening the vent in the dense technospheric cloud. This whole concept is not a concept that could be or is not being well received. It's not even being well received here as I talk about it for some people. So it is a whole different way to look at it because it encompasses absolutely everything. And and historically, we all look at everything within our own local perspective and our own culture. But what cosmic history is saying is that right now is a time is where we are all going to take a whole look at everything and take everything, not everything into consideration. We're going to take all of the commonality, all the spiritual commonalities of every culture and integrate it into one. And that is what the very first sentence that we talked about today is the interpenetration of the absolute into the relative. And so now we are all connected through the internet, and we are exploring our commonalities and finding out that you know um, we are all we're all ego beings, and we're all struggling as with the ego, and we're all doing what we can to transcend it, and we're all doing it in different ways in different parts of the world or different teachings. But through all of them that I see, it is just what the course is saying is removing the blocks into the spiritual truth of who we really are. Okay, understanding the present world model of reality, which is the next topic that we come to. So I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have to explore this one, but we'll go ahead and get started. If our task is to deconstruct the present world model and reconstruct a higher world model, we must stop and ask, what is the present world model? In the nature of the present world model, can we actually say it is a world model? What is it a model of? It is basically a model of materialistic, acquisitive type of intelligence. Did I say that right? Acquisitive type of intelligence, meaning the intelligence to acquire, if you want to call it that. Its view of the world is that the world is something to be mined or something to be exploited and turned into real estate. But what is the world really? Okay, so in this first paragraph, just to deconstruct the present world model, my understanding that is that we have to deconstruct our individual ego model. The change has to be made within the individual consciousness, and that in itself gets extended, and that's how the world changes. It's not like we can point our fingers at people and say you should do this and you should do that and you're wrong and all of that, when we can't even change ourselves. We recognize how hard it is to change ourselves, those of us that are working at it. And we have these politicians blaming this guy and that guy and all of that, and they should change their beliefs, or they should change this, and they're doing this wrong and they're doing that wrong. Like, how can somebody change just by somebody criticizing them and saying that they should change? You know, I mean, it is, for me, I can say that it is not an easy thing to snap my fingers and all of a sudden my whole way of thinking, and I can snap my finger and all of a sudden beliefs that I had all my life I no longer had, just because I don't want them, or just because somebody says I shouldn't have them. That's a tall order. Tall order. Humbling order, you know. I mean, I know better than to say, well, somebody should do this, or someone's wrong, or something like that, or somebody should change. Anyways, at least I try. I try not to point the finger. Okay, next paragraph. From the materialistic point of view, the world is a cold, inert, lifeless rock, and therefore you can do what you want with it because it doesn't have any feelings anyway. You can sell it like real estate, and you can mine it. You can build freeways and highways and cities, whatever you want. You can cut down trees and even move or carve up large parts of mountains. You can bore giant tunnels beneath the ocean, and you can divert rivers and drain lakes. You can go wherever you desire and leave massive amounts of waste and residues of pollution in the air, land, and sea. Underlying this mentality is that the world has no feelings. It's just there is a big rock with which you do whatever you want. Okay, I'm not sure I need to add anything on it outside of the fact is when the Europeans came to the Americas and they brought this concept of owning land, the Native Americans, indigenous people, could not understand that. It's like, how can someone own that whole principle of life, that you own that principle that can grow plants, that whole principle that reproduces wildlife or whatever you have that you're going to eat, that whole principle of sustaining and maintaining life on that land. They just did not understand how a person can own all of that. And they were right. There is no one that can own any of that. Just like no one can own, how a person perceives the world. You can't own, how a person is going to view a flower, or how a person is going to feel the sun on its face, or how a person is going to enjoy a song or music, or how our control, how a person is going to love, or how we love one another. How can somebody own all of that? But we try. Special relationships, we try. Okay, next paragraph. These are just some examples of the current model of reality that must be examined. The point is that you have to stop and look at the different attitudes and dispositions that constitute what you might call the current world model. You have to go underneath these attitudes and dispositions to see what they are all really saying. In order to do this, you must develop a meditative mind. Okay, well, that paragraph I think is pretty much self-explanatory. And to develop a meditative mind, that is something that, I mean, if anyone is going to get anywhere in any kind of personal growth or breaking out of a routine thought system, meditation is essential. Essential. Without meditation, it's just a ongoing loop of the same belief system over and over and over and over again. Okay, a meditative mind will at least train you to at least stop that and get some perspective of what that automatic loop is. Okay. Developing a meditative mind is necessary because we are on an evolutionary path which requires an active, contemplative perspective in which the classic yoga meditation techniques are actually means to a higher end. It is important to grasp the evolutionary stage which we are rapidly evolving into, which is a stage of the noosphere, spiritual truth. This stage of the noosphere is a systematic cosmic perception and information structure that can only be made known and realized once we have dissolved the current mental model of the world, which is the ego thought system. We are not dissolving the current mental model of the world to be anarchists, and we are not developing meditative states of mind to be like Ramada Maharishi or Milarepa, who are developing meditative states of mind so we can go to the next higher world level. Okay, so this is probably where I'm going to end. Actually, I have one more paragraph for this section, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. Yoga is an evolutionary aid to create the right state of mind to apprehend the next construct of knowledge. This construct of knowledge must be incorporated or brought into the body in order for us to get to the next evolutionary mode of reality, which is the noosphere, the planetary system of cosmic perception and structure of knowing. So basically, as I understand it, when he's talking about yoga, he's not really just talking about the yoga of the Western part of the world. The yoga is I don't want to say a mental discipline. It is a spiritual discipline, a meditative discipline, which can incorporate all of the yoga positions and everything that we see and so commonly called yoga. And I believe he goes into different kinds of yoga, but well, basically what he's saying here is these are just a method or a gateway to break out of the routine ego mind system. So I am going to turn over the mic, and I want to thank everybody for listening, and I hope you're getting some kind of insights and enjoyment. Okay, talk to everybody later.